And in this week's issue, Jeremy Lott wrote a piece looking at whether U.S.-Canadian relations may end up being warmer than many people expect.
I think I was probably the greatest thing that happened to him, but I can't take full credit. His party was losing by a lot, and he ended up winning, so I really want to congratulate him. It was probably one of the greatest comebacks in the history of politics, maybe even greater than mine. You know.
President Donald Trump has upended American politics, we all know that, but he has also had a pretty dramatic effect on Canadian politics.
Just a little while ago, before I got involved and totally changed the election, which I don't care about.
The Liberal Party of Canada was not expected to do very well in the recent elections, but since Trump became president, they steadily gained in the polls and ultimately won those elections. A big reason for that, Trump was constantly trolling the former Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens.
And there was a lot of talk from President Trump about Canada becoming the 51st state, which Canadian voters did not like.
I called him Governor Trudeau because they should be the 51st state. Why are we subsidizing you $200 and $250 billion a year? He said, I really don't know. And I said, well, I don't know either. I said, what would happen to Canada if we didn't? He said, Canada would be obliterated if that happened. I said, then Canada should be a 51st state.
The new Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, took a pretty hard line against the types of things that Trump was saying about his country while he was campaigning.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over. We will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States. We will need to pivot our trade relationships elsewhere. And we will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations.
However, Trump and Carney seemed to hit it off at the White House.
A few days ago, he won a very big election in Canada. But I want to just congratulate you. That was a great election, actually. We were watching it with interest, and I think Canada chose a very talented person, a very good person.
So often what happens with Trump is that personal relationships are very important, and they can be the key to diplomatic relations between the two countries. Carney definitely seemed to realize this and try to draw Trump in.
As you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace, that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale.
Takes two to tango, right? But never say never. Never say never.
We've seen this happen with the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. We've seen this happen with President Macron in France. We've seen this happen with the last two presidents of Mexico, who were somewhat more left-leaning. Sometimes these more left-leaning presidents and prime ministers, because of personal relationships and because of managing Trump's personality, actually end up getting along with him better than some of the more conventionally conservative leaders, such as when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister in Great Britain. Trump and Johnson did not have the greatest personal relationship, and there seems to be some strains now between President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Carney, however, has an opportunity to really reset the table in terms of U.S.-Canadian relationship after the sort of difficulties and challenges as Trump came in and started to assert his will over the whole hemisphere.
No, we're going to be friends with Canada. Regardless of anything, we're going to be friends with Canada. Canada is a very special place to me. I know so many people that live in Canada.
And as you can hear, Trump took a much more conciliatory tone toward Carney and Canada after Carney's election, recognizing the Liberals' political success. So obviously, Trump is going to once again renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement that he renegotiated in his first term, wants to renegotiate it between Mexico and Canada in his second term. So there's a lot of things going on that are pretty important in terms of U.S.-Canada relationships. Will things be better than many people expect? What do you think? Comment down below.